In this lesson, I will cover attributes, seam allowances, and annotations. So I'd already mentioned previously in one of the lessons some of the attributes here with our pocket shapes that we were dealing with. I've got a pocket right over here, this gray one. We colored gray so that we could see the changes in the cut and spreading of those pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and change my stroke, I'm sorry, not my stroke right now, my fill back to white for the interior of the pocket. Another quick review here, I have copied my flap. I think on this pocket I want to include a flap, but I want the corners of the flap to be beveled to mimic those of the pocket. So keyboard shortcut for adding my points is the plus sign, and I will add them on here. Get close enough to the intersection using your graph to help you find those fairly quickly. I put those at 1/2 inch difference, so it's the same angle as what it is for the bottom of the pocket. Now to delete this point at the corner, I could just use the minus sign on my keyboard in order to quickly change my tool to that. V, like for the word Valentine, is the keyboard shortcut back to my object select cursor. So I can do that and then deselect the pocket I was working with. All right, a little bit more about attributes. Our attributes are the stroke and the fill. So over here we've got fill color, stroke color. I can also change those colors right up here at the top option menu when I am in a selection tool, and it opens up a very limited palette for colors for either one of those. Usually when I have clicked on one of these colors, I get the color picker over here, which gives me a range of colors if I wanted to change those. I also have more control by just double clicking on my stroke or fill color box, and then I've got a wide spectrum per color, and I can change that throughout the whole rainbow and then even select those colors, and it will compare the new color to the old color. That way if I was trying to go for a shade lighter or darker of, let's say, the purple or something, I could do that. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that and leave that at our white default at the moment. Some more information though about our attributes that I want to go over. When I select an item, up here on the stroke panel next to it, it will usually default to 1 point. I can increase that to 3 or 4 points or more, or I can decrease it less than 1 point, going down to 0.75, 0.5, and 0.25. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just leave that at 3. Over here, I'm going to change this to be, actually I'm not going to change that. I'm going to come back and change this one back to what the flap is, which is at 1 point right now. I'm going to show you one other tool. It's called the eyedropper tool. So with this item selected, or this object, I want to affect the change to that object to be like this one. And when I click on that other object, then now it has the same attributes, a white fill and a 1 point stroke. All right, so now talking about some of our stroke options. We have over here the panel for a stroke. If you do not see it, go up to Window and come down the list. They are in alphabetical order, and you can find the stroke panel. We can control the weight of the stroke in this panel. We can also change the end caps at the end points to a squared off line to rounded. You can make your corners, instead of hard corner, a rounded corner at that point. The dashed line feature is the one that we will want to use here soon. But first, let's go ahead and just build some lines. I can use my line tool. This is a straight line. I can click, hold, and drag my line. I've got a line there. I want to actually, it's still highlighted, I want to make it a 3 points line. Now, To draw a new one, I am going to actually hold down my Command or my Control key. It will temporarily toggle my tool and my cursor from the line tool to the selection tool. I click on my artboard to deselect the last one I drew, and then I'm getting ready to draw another one. In this case, I'm going to draw one more solid line at 3 points because that was the last I had left that. Again, toggle to my selection tool to deselect that. Now I'm going to draw another line, but before I do that, I'm going to change back to 1 point. Click, hold, and drag to draw one there, and I'm going to do one more here. Now let's change some of the attributes, whoops, cancel, to these lines. The top one I'm going to go ahead and leave at 3 points. This will become what we're going to call our cut line eventually. This one we can utilize as a grain line. Let me show you how we can put arrows at the ends of it. I can, down here at the bottom of our stroke panel, I can click for an arrowhead and select a shape, whichever shape arrow I may want. I'm going to go ahead and go with number 7. Now, if I find that these are somewhat kind of large, underneath those arrows that I selected for my start point and end point, I can change that to, maybe I'll make it 75% of the size. See how it changes it down? It fits better for whatever size I am doing. There we go. Now, moving along, this line I actually want to change to a dashed line. It will represent a stitching line. So I can click on my dashed line. It defaulted to the last known settings I had put. So I'm actually going to delete these others, because for the first time that you click on a dashed line, you'll probably default to 12 points. That's 12 points for the dash, and if nothing's in the gap, it will just repeat that. So it would be 12 points for the gap, 12 points dash, 12 point gap, 12 point dash, gap, so on. But I need a different series of dashes so that I have a different line indicator for perhaps a fold line or other type of lines I might need to put onto this patterns. So again, I'm going to put it into click the dash. It defaults to my 12 point, but now I want a different distance for the space. So I may do something like that, and that actually will be my fold line. Or I could even change my distance here to an 8 on the dash, and oops, I need to have that object selected to affect the change to it. So here you can see these are quite different in their looks, so that when you look at a pattern you can automatically notice, I bet I have to do something different to this line. So we've got these little symbols set up, and we'll come back to those in a moment. Let's add our fold lines to the pocket that we had separated. I have my line tool, and I can automatically jump to those points. Let's actually go back real quick and take a look at where those points are. They are right here and here, and I want to have my lines go from there down and from here down. So my line tool will, I have my snap to point and snap to grid on. So from there on down, and I will let up. I can deselect everything, and over here, my other line will be here. All right. Now I want to start changing some of these attributes. So I can select this line. Holding the Shift key down will allow me to add to that selection. So these two lines I want to be this line. We'll have this represent our fold line. So I'm using my eyedropper and I'm saying make that like so. All right. Before I go changing any of these other lines though, I'm going to show you how to add your seam allowance. I need to spread some of these out because my seam allowance is going to come out around the outer edges at 1/2 inch. So these would probably run into each other. So I'm going to actually move the pocket flap over a little bit. Let's go ahead and select our pocket flap to begin with. With it selected, it does have to be a closed shape for this to work correctly, but under Object, Path, Offset Path. I will click that. I get a dialog pop-up box that lets me say how far away I want that to be. We can use 0.5, that's 1/2 inch, that we are going to use for the seam allowance. If you wanted 5/8 of an inch, that would be 0.625. But like I said, we'll just use 1/2 inch. When I click OK, you notice it puts offset of the original path seam allowance around the outside edge. Let's go ahead and do that to our overall pocket. It's not to the line, so don't select the lines, just the pocket shape. Object, Path, Offset Path. It'll always ask again. That was the last number I typed in, so I don't have to retype it, and there it is. Now, these are separate shapes here, okay? I want both my outside shapes to be the thicker line for the cut, so I will select that new outside edge for the pocket, and holding the Shift key down, I can add to that selection. For the outside edge of the pocket, the letter I on my keyboard is my shortcut to my eyedropper tool, and I can change to those. Now, another keyboard shortcut. Yes, I want to use my eyedropper tool again, but I need to change my selections. So I can toggle by using my Control or my Command key, hold it down, click away from those items to deselect them. Now select the inner shapes that are my pattern shape. While holding down my Command or Control, I can also hold down my Shift key. It allows me then to add to those. Now these are my finished pattern sizes. They need to be my stitch lines. So this line, dashed line, is going to represent my stitch lines. There we go. My cursor was not close enough. It clicked into the middle of nothing, and so that's why those look like they disappeared for a moment. And they also gave it a nothing fill, but we will fill those with a solid white. All right. Whoops. No. I did it again, didn't I? No. All right. Go to my selection tool to click away from everything. All right. Last things here to change. I'm going to extend these lines up to the top and bottom edges, and I can do that by selecting my direct select, get one of those points, and by using my keyboard arrows, I can shift and move those points very quickly, and then I also know they stay straight as I do that. Okay, so there are those lines done. Last thing is the annotations, using your type tool to label things. So here's my type tool. I can move inside of my shape. Although if I get too close to a line, notice the cursor changes and it will think I want to put the type on that line. Or if I put it too close to a shape, it thinks I want to put it, form it to the shape. I do not want to do those. I want to make sure I am clear of any of those. When I click to type, it'll default to probably the last size of my font and to the last font I used. So I do want my font a little bit larger here, and it for some reason puts in these letters just so you have an idea of what the size of the font will be. They're highlighted, so as soon as I start typing, it deletes those and puts in the new ones. So this is my pocket. I can click return. I want, let's say this was my size 8. I want you to cut 2 of those. Now, when you're done typing, you can use your selection tool to get out of the type. You can change these. You can scale it by dragging the corners. As long as the type is highlighted, you can change the size of the font if you want to. Under paragraph, it allows you to center the type rather than giving it a side left or side right orientation. Any of that is fine, however you'd like to change it. Under character, you have some more options to change your type, as well as the down arrow next to your font. You have lots of different fonts, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it as it is. And I can kind of position that wherever I may need to. I can also copy that, just like I can copy any object, and I can move one over here to my pocket flap, but I may need to double click inside that type and add the word flap to my pattern piece. All right, almost done here. I'm going to use my line tool one more time in order to indicate my grain line. And for this, I don't really need to worry about where or how far it goes. Once I have my line drawn, I can use my picker tool, my eyedrop tool, and select the attributes of this line. It's not picking up the arrowheads, so I will have to add those arrowheads myself. I do need a grain line though also on my pocket flap. I'll put that there. Now I can have that line selected and this other line and change to my arrowheads. Remember, you can change your arrowhead shape to whichever you want. And in this case, I'm changing the scale of those because they're quite large on my pattern pieces. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out and you have a pretty good idea of these items. I'm just going to move my little symbols away over here for a moment. So here are some finished pieces for this pocket. Of course, you would also need to have your name in those annotations. So what we have here is the finished shape marked with a stitch line, the outer edge shape, which is the cut line. We did that in a heavier attribute because when you print these out, you want them nice and solid and able to see. Same with grain lines. You want the type to be large enough that you can see it quite quickly. For your assignment, you will be making 3 different pockets, finishing them out. And just from practicing, we came up with 4 different types of pockets, split this one even, so we had 5 altogether. You will be developing them to their finished state with seam allowance on them, changing your line attributes, including the type on there. If you slashed and spread those, then you need your fold lines for the pocket. In fact, we can zoom in real quick. I'm sorry, this video does go a little bit long. Let's also indicate fold line. So I am writing that word out here. I am going to bring it closer over, and if I get where this round part is, I'm trying to get near a corner. There we go. Once I get near a corner, I can rotate that around. I can mark that there. I can Alt to make a copy. I can move it here. I could even Alt and change one more and even click on that and change it to my grain line. There we go. So good labeling on all of that. Good luck with it. If you have any questions, please let me know.